Previously on Powerhouse Reviews.
Okay, listen closely, Papa. Your new business partner is 50 blades of gray. When you mix your professional life with your personal one, it can get really messy. I mean, just look at history of all friends and families that have gotten together to create some crazy business or whatever scheme that they had, and just for it to fail and just backfire, and them to just have their whole relationships in jeopardy.
Yeah, and you know what? This whole thing could have been freaking avoided if you didn't sign that contract. What the hell were you thinking?
Man, I told you before, Papa, I was doing what was best for the channel. That man 50 Blades of Grey is a legend in the business.
You sure you weren't followed? I've heard about you. They say you're good at what you do. Even better at keeping secrets. Powerhouse is alive. I want you to find him and end him.
Ricardo Milo sends his regards!
We still have 50 Blades of Grey technically running the channel, and now we got a freaking plague doctor breathing down our necks. I just feel like life should be a lot better right now.
And now, the conclusion.
For the third time, the game starts with a pretty awesome intro. Early on, you can tell that the production values for the game are leaps and bounds better than the first two games before it. The intro also sets the tone of this being the last hurrah, a feeling that is reinforced heavily throughout this game. In addition, you can create your character, which is known in the game as the Ashen One. Why they call you that is up to you to figure out. The character creation this time is the most advanced yet for the series. Even the body itself can be adjusted to a very expansive degree. As is tradition with the Souls game, we will start off as deprived with our trusty wooden club. Right off the bat, you can tell this game is much faster paced and does not mess around. In Dark Souls 2, it took about an hour for me to encounter the first boss. For this game, it harkens back to the first with you having to face a litmus test known as Gundyr. For a first boss, he is freaking awesome and is a great way to test new players. Really well done. While we're on the subject of bosses, this game has the best out of all the Souls games. Some of my favorites from the base game are Gundyr, of course, Nameless King, Pontiff Sullivan, and the Abyss Watchers. All I enjoy for various different reasons, whether that'll be for the boss designs of Sullivan or the thematic experience of the Abyss Watchers. If we include the DLC bosses, the amount is just staggering. A special shout out so should be given to the final boss of the main game, Soul of Cinder. This boss is not only visually amazing and satisfying to defeat, but the music that plays is a direct callback to Dark Souls 1 that really hit me on an unexpected emotional level. Once again, great stuff all around. And yeah, the music is fan-freaking-tastic. So many absolutely legendary tracks to listen to, with my personal favorite being the Abyss Watchers music. It fits the theme of the boss battle perfectly. Graphically, this looks pretty damn good too, which is to be expected considering this to be the third game in the series. The armor sets especially look the best out of all the games. The Lothric Knight set is especially amazing. Fashion Souls is definitely strong with this one. The graphics are also not the only thing that have been altered. While the core of the combat remains the same with weak attacks and strong attacks, weapons now have a skill move attached to them. These skill moves can be activated by holding the weapon in both hands and pressing LT/L2. Some give you a temporary attack buff while others can perform a special combo. The boss weapons especially have some really cool moves to play with. This adds so much depth and uniqueness with each weapon, allowing for some new possibilities to explore for both PvE and PvP. The pace of the combat has increased tremendously with none of that stiffness from the first two games present. You can freaking finally walk while drinking Estus Flask, so you're not planted to the ground when doing so. The adaptability stat has also been removed, so no need to invest 20 points just to have a decent roll anymore. However, some feel that the roll has become too powerful. While I can't agree to that with a certain extent, rolling has been a staple of the franchise since the beginning. Many, if not all the bosses from the original I have beaten from simply rolling out of the way. I believe many of these complaints are more directed towards the way armor works now. No longer can armor be upgraded like in the previous two games. You're basically stuck with whatever the stats of the armor are. While this may be fine if all you care about is the poise, That system has unfortunately taken 12 steps back and 27 to the side. Poise only works now within certain combat frames. This ultimately limits your weapon setup and the armors to use if you're going in that direction. It also doesn't help that the game is much more linear compared to the first two games. As I've said before, linearity is not always a bad thing. It ends up creating a much more focused adventure that is great for newcomers of the series. While I wish there were more paths to discover and alternate routes to take, the level design more than makes up for it with some of the best in the series. While you still do have the cheap encounters from time to time, most can be avoided with some careful planning. And that leads to a common complaint that many veterans have, that the game is too easy. I have to strongly disagree here. I do believe out of all the Souls titles that this is the easiest out of all of them. That's mainly due to how unfair many of the encounters in the first two games are. The second game especially had a bad habit of just throwing every enemy under the sun to kill you, which is just lazy design when repeated too often. However, that's not to say the game is easy by a long shot. If you're not familiar with the series, this will definitely test you, especially with the first boss Gundyr I mentioned early on. Even for me, I had some tough times with some of the bosses, as many of them have multiple forms and their own unique surprises. One thing I will agree with though is the lack of replay value in New Game Plus. Most if not all of the bosses and enemies you encounter just have bigger health bars with no new moves to discover. Dark Souls 2 did this far better, and I get that game is flawed, but I would have wished that the New Game Plus philosophy of that game was carried over, as well as the bonfire aesthetics. Playing this game feels like it ignores Dark Souls 2 entirely, but that honestly may be for the best. I will also add that the lack of viable builds this time around is incredibly small. Not only is this due to the poise issues I've mentioned before, but also with magic itself. Instead of having a set amount of times you can cast per spell, it uses basically a mana bar known as focus points. This is also used when performing skill moves with weapons. This unfortunately does not replenish automatically and will need to be done so with the new Ashen Estus flasks, which you'll only have a limited amount at first. Pyromancy also now requires intelligence to use some of the high level spells, limiting its use to highly specialized builds. While I still believe magic is overall good to invest in, it definitely is not as rewarding as the first two games. All these changes inevitably affect the PvP as well. A big change is how an invader's health is reduced when invading. This gives the defender an automatic advantage that makes the whole thing very unbalanced. Couple that with how many phantoms can be summoned at basically no limit, and you'll constantly be in 1v3 situations when invading. Due to the reworked poise system, all it takes is one hit for the invader to get stun locked into oblivion. Basically, invade at your own risk. Summoning NPCs and other players basically works the same way. In the past, you needed human effigies to restore humanity. In this one, you need to use an ember to become enkindled. Shout out to the nice fire effect that it comes along with. Just know that you can be invaded when enkindled, but it is overall preferable due to the massive 30% increase in health and the imbalance I've mentioned previously. In terms of story, it's much better than the second. There's a sense of triumph and finale prevalent throughout it. The game is still ominous as hell, but not to the degree of the first one. Heck, the game is mainly chock full of references and callbacks to the original, often ignoring the second one. There's even our friendly neighborhood blacksmith Andre of Astora.
What needs smithing this day?
You also have a character who is very similar to Siegfried and Sigurd of Katarina.
I was absorbed in thought.
There's actually a really cool fight involving him that further exudes that feeling of accomplishment. The callbacks continue with even some references on a few characters no longer present. I was actually pretty sad learning the fate of one particular blacksmith. Rest in peace, his gentle soul. On less morbid news, these callbacks and references to the first game can be seen as pure fan service and nothing else. Personally, I don't mind this as it ties up some loose ends that were left ambiguous in the first. It also allows us to play with some of the equipment from that game once again, like Smold's hammer or Ornstein's spear. They may not have the same effectiveness as in the original, but their inclusion is still appreciated nonetheless. As a special treat, let's take a look at the two DLCs in the order they were released in. The first one we will start with is Ashes of Erandriel. This DLC can be accessed through a certain painting. I'm keeping this as vague as possible to prevent spoilers. The world of Erandriel follows a winter motif that is very nicely done. It definitely is a breath of fresh cold air drifting off into the freezing and desolate abyss. The highlight to me is Sister Fried. This is probably the best boss boss fight in the game. Her scythe mixed in with the DLC's ice motif is freaking awesome. You can also get her legendary weapon as well, which is a lot of fun to use and adds another scythe to play the game with. The big downside to this is the length of the DLC. This can easily be completed in less than an hour if you know what you're doing, and that's including the secret boss. It really is meant to be played in conjunction with the Ringed City, as by itself it feels incomplete. The Ringed City is a direct follow-up to the Ashes. If you have purchased both, you can teleport here after beating Sister Fried. This DLC is far longer than the previous one and is a tale of two halves. The first part features a ton of verticality as you jump off of crazy heights without taking any form of damage at all. It makes navigation a little confusing, but the attempt to make the place unique is appreciated nonetheless. The second half is your typical Dark Souls 3 affair with a ton of mini bosses and great weapons thrown in. The Ring Knight armor set as well as the Ring Knight paired greatswords are just awesome to use in conjunction with one another. For me, the bosses here range from being disappointingly easy to incredibly frustrating, the most infamous being Slave Knight Gale. I will admit, it is visually stunning and his weapon is fun to play with. However, many of his moves are incredibly OP as he can just zoom across one side of the arena to the next with each swing. It becomes nearly impossible to get any hits in and just becomes a pure dodge fest. Overall, Dark Souls 3 is easily my favorite in the series and a great send-off for the franchise. While the lack of build diversity and weak New Game Plus hurt its replayability, it still is a blast to play and I have put over 100 hours already with many more on the way. The graphics are great, the music is fantastic, the combat is smooth as silk, the bosses are the best in the series, and the sense of accomplishment is at an all-time high. I didn't mention it in this review, but there are a ton of mods that add so much more content and help with replay value. If I could only play one Souls title for the rest of my life, it definitely would be this one.
Hey guys, sorry for not being on camera very much. I had to get ready, as you see right here. Got my broom, got this costume over here, so hope you guys like it, but I'm ready to battle.
Hey Papa, how's it going, man? You ready to take down the main 50 Blades of Great?
Hey, to be honest, I'm kind of nervous. I mean, I don't think he's as hard as fighting Crow, but I don't know what's gonna happen to me. What's gonna happen to the channel afterwards, whether I win or lose? What if I don't make it?
Oh, don't worry about it, Papa. Listen, with all the training and preparation that you've done, you should take down the main, no problem. But in case you don't, I'm gonna turn this into a cooking channel. Comprende?
You know, to be fair, that probably will do better in the algorithm, but honestly, I'd rather just keep this a gaming channel. It's my passion after all. But you're still the one who got us in this mess, and even though that's the case, I'm gonna forgive you because I know you try to rectify your wrongs.
Hey, it is what it is, man. Listen, if you need another long-term storyline for me to create, just call me. I'll make something happen, and we're gonna get back to the same situation, or maybe different. Anyways, have a good one, Papa. Take care. God bless you.
All right, finally time to take on the final boss.
Yeah, I know. This should have been patched out already. My apologies.
The hell are you supposed to be?
Marcus Wolfhawk.
Come on, man, I hate that character. Are you serious? I don't want to fight that.
Why did you have to pick Iminasha?
You know what? Whatever. I just want to finish this arc. I want to get it done with. It's gone way too long. So let's begin. Cue the Dark Souls music. Put a life bar if I will. Let's go. Have at you.
Elites, gather.